And now, the moment you've all been waiting for. You're tuned in to Tapped Out. Hosted by Brendan Tobin and Sean Levine. Only on the BetQL Network.
And a good Saturday evening to you. Welcome into Tapped Out here on the BetQL Network. Produced by Jake Noecker and with my co-host Brendan Tobin. I'm the sports machine, Sean Levine. Good to have you along for the ride for the next 2 hours. A bit of a quiet fight night compared to what we saw last Saturday when we had Tyson Fury go at it for the championship of the world. Next Saturday, we've got a great pay-per-view. So we'll talk about all of it. We'll talk about making some money along the way. Let's start off, BT. A lot of UFC fight announcements. UFC 303, Ian Gary versus Michael Venom Page. That sounds like fight of the night to me.
Yeah, I love that matchup. I know that there's been so much talk on social media and a lot of back and forth between Colby Covington and Ian Gary. And yeah, I mean, that's cool. But like, I'm ready for some new blood. Michael Venom Page just made a nice debut in the UFC. It seems like a really fun stylistic fight. I think it's going to be a fun buildup between the both of them. And I just think it makes for a more pleasing fight. So I'm excited for it. I understand people are like, why is Ian Gary taking the fight? You know, Michael Venom Page is ranked below him. I think there are special exceptions for a guy like MVP, who you guys know was in Bellator for a long time. Everybody knows if you do something impressive against him, I don't think it hinders Ian Gary in any way, shape, or form. Like, it's not like he's taking on an unknown guy who hasn't been proven against anybody. So I'm excited about it. I'm frankly more excited about that than I was the Colby Covington fight, because I felt like for the Colby Covington fight, we were mostly just excited for press conferences, and you know, I want an entertaining fight. I think this one is much better.
What do you think they do with Colby? Because last time out he fought for the belt. He hadn't fought for like 2 years before that. He got into this thing with a rough relationship with Dana White, but then for a while it seemed like those guys were best friends. He's gotten a lot of opportunities, but at this point it's like, I don't know how much the promotion likes him. I don't know how much the fans like him. This is crazy, but if I'm Colby, I know he still has fights left on his contract. I think about jumping ship, like and going to do some bare knuckle or something like that, because it ain't happening for you in the UFC going forward. You're not a popular fighter anymore. Your best days are behind you. You're never going to fight for a belt again. You're kind of a wild man. Maybe WWE's the next step for him.
I just think that the one thing you give Colby credit about is he's very opportunistic, and he doesn't have a problem sitting back and waiting. You know,
That's true.
He'll find the right opponent that he feels like will fast track him back into the title picture once again. So I think that's what he does. It's typically, you know, anytime that he's fallen out, he's either waited it out and the title fight has come back right to him, or he has taken on a tough guy, he's gotten a good win, and then he's right back in the title picture. So I just think that
title picture. You said it once and I was going to cut you off. Then you said it 2 more times. Colby Covington in the title picture? He looked awful last time, dude.
I agree with you, but you got
him.
Hold on. What's more unrealistic? Him getting back to the title with a win, or you saying he should go to bare knuckle? Like, that was your suggestion 2 seconds ago. And you're jumping down my throat? Like, you're like, okay, yeah, I think we should send the wrestler to bare knuckle.
Touche. I get your point. All I'm saying is maybe we're both a little bit off our rocker with this one. Let's keep going down with more fight announcements. At UFC 304, Arnold Allen versus Giga Chikadze. That's one, when I say it, I'm not exactly sure who I'd put my money on. That's a pretty even fight.
Yeah, that is really shaped up. That Manchester card is, everybody's got to get their coffee or their tea, or, according to Marcel Dorf last week, maybe some illegals up their nose to keep him going for having to stay up at 3 a.m. British time. But it's a banging card. It's a great match between Arnold Allen and Giga Chikadze, a fun style of matchups, and I think Arnold Allen is looking to impress. I think I lean him in that matchup, but it's a great one.
Yeah, I like that UFC 304 card. You talk about all of the lots of British on there, as you would expect. We'll talk a little bit more about that later on in the show. Also, outside of the United States, coming up August 3rd in Abu Dhabi, Chito Vera versus Davidson Figueiredo. I feel like that's a fight that could have happened like a million. I've always thought when I look at those two guys that at some point they're going to end up in the octagon together. again, I'm having trouble with a lean in that one, only because both those guys, when they're good, they're great. Like, I've seen Chito Vera look awesome. Admittedly, it's been a while. I think now that I'm saying it, I think Davison Figueiredo probably wins that fight. What say you?
I mean, he's definitely got the momentum riding for him in a better spot right now. Chito taking a just a lopsided loss to Sean O'Malley outside of like a kick late in that fight. But, there's been the one thing we said even leading up to the Chito Sean O'Malley fight is that he has not been winning a lot of rounds. He has been kind of sitting back in these fights looking for the home run ball, and it's kind of bit him in the butt a little bit. So I wonder if we see a Chito Vera, kind of get pedal to the metal right away, whereas Davidson Figueiredo looked, pretty good, especially when he finished off Cody Garbrandt in their matchup and him getting to bantamweight. So appropriate, fun matchup. Seems like a good crossroads fight for both guys, but I would agree with you. I think Davidson Figueiredo has the lean for my money right now.
Early starts is just not Chito Vera's style. It never has been. He can finish you. He can kick you in the head now. He might choke you out, but early starts, I've never seen it when it comes to Chito Vera. He's kind of the anti-Conor McGregor. He likes to take his time. Brendan Tobin, Sports Machine, Sean Levine here, talking some fighting on the BetQL network. Jamal Hill has a new opponent. Khalil Roundtree is out. Carlos Olberg is in. To me, that becomes a little bit of an easier fight. I don't really know what to think of Jamal Hill, to be honest with you. I think it was crazy in hindsight that he was the main event, half of it for UFC 300. He's still a really good fighter. I suppose I'll take him to win this fight.
Well, I don't understand. Like, you're down on him for getting knocked out? Like coming off an Achilles? Like, what is the problem?
No,
with him?
I honestly, going into it, like, I didn't want to talk too much smack on the decision, but Jamal Hill should have never, ever been half of the main event of the biggest fight card of all time. I mean, we can say that with all honesty, right? He's not worthy of it.
I mean, not worthy. I mean, he was the champion before he tore his Achilles.
Oh, it's not that he wasn't the champion. It's that he wasn't the champion long enough or exciting enough, or he wasn't Izzy, or he wasn't Usman, or he wasn't one of these guys that's clearly heading into the Hall of Fame. I mean, he ain't a journeyman either. He's somewhere in between. Do you have a lot of interest in watching Jamal Hill fight? Maybe I'm missing something.
I mean, he's been a pretty entertaining fighter. Yeah. I mean, like, usually, if he loses in the fashion that he did with Alex Pereira, who, by the way, is, not looking very vulnerable against anybody as of late. There's not a lot of shame in that for me. And yeah, I mean, the guy has shown his explosivity, how devastating his hands are. I don't know. I mean, I'm not like off the Jamal Hill wagon as of yet. I mean, it's a tough match against Olberg, who's obviously been rolling lately, and is coming off a win a couple of weeks ago against Alonzo Menafield, so he looks great, steps in there in last minute. But I think the one thing I wonder about Jamal really is, I guess, the health. He is coming off the torn Achilles.
Sure.
Seemed like a pretty speedy return already initially back to the Pereira fight. Now you're already stepping back in there after getting your clock cleaned by Pereira. So I guess my bigger question about Jamal Hill is not his talent. It more has to do with, is he fully recovered? Is he fully healthy to the guy that was the champion?
Yeah, you can bet your hard-earned money on that guy, not mine. Did you say he has explosivity?
Yes. Explosiveness.
Okay. I was going to say, I'll have to take your word for it. I don't know what that means. Here's one that I'm interested in, and I can't believe I'm saying this. Chael Sonnen and Anderson Silva are going to get into a boxing match coming up June 15th. If you ask me who's the best trash talker in the history of the UFC, most people would say it's Conor McGregor. I think that it's hands down Uncle Chael. Maybe it's because he came before, but part of that was obviously a lot of his back and forth with Anderson Silva, and before that, Tito Ortiz, all the Silvas, now that I think about it. I think this is going to be a fun fight. You think about back to the couple of times that those guys got in the octagon. The first time around, Chael dominated the fight. Now, he lost the fight in the end, but it wasn't close. Chael was beating him up for the first 4 rounds, and then eventually Anderson wrapped his legs around his neck, and then Chael tapped the second time around. Chael, not so much. That was Anderson's night. I think it's cool. They're old, but I'm going to watch this fight.
Yeah, it's cool. I think it'll have a fun buildup. I mean, it feels like they've been pretty friendly ever since the careers have ended. It was obviously announced that their fight is going into the Hall of Fame during International Fight Week in a couple weeks, so that'll be a good jumping off point to build up the fight. I just don't have a lot of interest in seeing Chael Sonnen box. He's not a boxer. Like, I think that's the thing that's weird about it is this is a man who's notorious for his wrestling. He loves wrestling. He's, probably carried the banner for wrestling as much as anybody in his era. And I just don't understand the appeal in watching him just throw hands with Anderson Silva. I feel like he's going to get cleaned up pretty good.
Well, he's trying to stay undefeated, right? Undefeated and undisputed. Chael Sonnen never lost a fight, never lost a round. Uncle Chael. I don't know if you knew that. Brendan Tobin.
That is what he claims.
Levine. That's what he says. We're going to preview the next two pay-per-views coming up here in depth as the show rolls on, because we've got a great one next week, and then, of course, Conor McGregor. But I did say we were going to talk about that Manchester card that you briefly talked about, so let's do that for a couple of minutes. At the top of it, the return of Leon Edwards versus Bilal Muhammad. It's been a while since we've seen Leon. It's kind of crazy that Bilal is finally getting his chance at the belt. Who do you think the UFC wants to win this fight? Like, it seems like the obvious answer would be Leon, because they have basically skipped over Bilal Muhammad a half a dozen times at this point. But as far as current champions go, I think if Dana's being honest with himself, he'd be just fine getting rid of Leon.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's like you said, when you have a guy who has a market like this that you could still get behind, I think it's obviously him. And quite frankly, I think we just got the answer with the whole 300 fiasco that you referenced earlier. That, I mean, they offered him 3 other fighters besides Bilal Muhammad before getting into Bilal Muhammad. So,
yeah,
it kind of like feels like Dana White is the kid sitting at the dinner table, and they're forcing him, to eat his broccoli. So we're begrudgingly getting on Dana's part having the Bilal Muhammad title shot. It has happened before where we've gotten guys where it's like, we got to do this one again. So we're back here. But I would say Leon is the pretty obvious answer there, as far as like if the promotion had their way, who they want, him or Bilal, because I think one of the worries is if Bilal wins the title, maybe he doesn't let go of that title for a while. So you're going to have a lot of Bilal Muhammad championship fights. And so like you look at the Ian Garys, the MVPs, the guys at that welterweight division who could be coming up, maybe a Conor McGregor, these stylistic fights that I think Leon Edwards could definitely win, but I think gives some of these strikers, more of a chance. Now they're all going to lose to Shavkat Rakhmonov anyway, so it doesn't really matter. But it's just I think if they had to be honest about it, I would say Leon's the guy that would want to win.
We are big fans of Shavkat Rakhmonov and his rat hat on this particular program.
I don't like that you said that.
It would be crazy, because if he was the champion, then he gets a louder microphone and he gets pay-per-view points and gets a lot more money. Whatever their beef has been with Bilal Muhammad for the last 3 or 4 years, they do not want him to be that guy. In the case of the co-main event for the heavyweight championship, Tom Aspinall, interim, I should say, versus Curtis Blades, John Jones came out last week and said it's for the number 1 contender fight, as if that means he's going to come out and fight whoever wins. Do you believe that? Do you only believe it if it's Tom Aspinall?
Yeah, because John was also talking this week. Dustin Poirier had some quotes about he may retire afterwards, and John was kind of alluding to the fact, it's okay if he does it, but it's a problem if I do it. Look, I think that's just with what John is engaging with right now. He has been very active on Twitter, and so you're going to get a lot of trolls. Like, people are going to just mess with the heavyweight champion of the world if they feel like they're going to get a response out of him. But it's not out of the realm of possibility that he fights, because, maybe at that point, Tom Aspinall, if he does something crazy against Curtis Blades, maybe John thinks the fight is worth it and would be a big money fight. I don't necessarily know if I see that for Curtis. Even if Curtis dominates Tom Aspinall, I think that could be where one with John's like, I don't know if that one's worth it. But I think most likely, he's going to do this fight and he'll retire, and Tom Aspinall or Curtis Blades, whoever wins, will be named undisputed champion.
I totally agree with that Curtis Blades sentiment. There's no way John Jones. There's nothing to gain by fighting Curtis Blades. I mean, if you fight him and knock him out or whatever happens, there's literally nothing to gain by beating that guy. Aspinall's a little bit different because he does have, it feels like, a little bit. The star power is gaining, at least compared to other current heavyweights. Real quick, also on that card, Muhammad Makayev is fighting Manel Kopp, at least on paper. I think Manel's missed weight like 7 times in his UFC career. Bobby Green, Patty Pimblett, and Meatball Molly on this card also. Coming up next, we're going to be joined by a friend of the show from the New York Post. Erich Richter stops by to talk some fighting with us right here on the BetQL Network.
Sean Levine on the BetQL Network.
And we roll on this Saturday night here on the BetQL Network with Brendan Tobin. I'm merely the sports machine, Sean Levine. Let's throw a little spice on this show and bring in our good friend from the New York Post. He is Erich Richter. Next week, we have a big fight card, UFC 302 at the top of the marquee. The Diamond is back. Dustin Poirier versus Islam. Before we break down that fight, just out of curiosity, what do you think Islam would have to do to be considered a better fighter than Khabib? Because I think most people think that they're very similar and they've got the connections, but that at this point, Khabib's got a better resume. Can Islam surpass him?
Islam was knocked out. I guess when you look at it, Islam's knocked out, and he was knocked out bad in that first round. And I think the same possibility existed with Khabib always. I was actually talking to a couple media members about this, and Khabib. The interesting thing about the Khabib Conor fight was that Khabib can't really stand up, right? And Islam can kind of stand up. Khabib has the ability and I guess the notoriety of a legend, where he was never beaten. Islam, if Khabib and Islam fought, what would the odds be? That's a fascinating question. I would say Islam's favored. I think Islam's better than him. Yeah, 100%. I would love to know how that, and New York Post colleague of mine, Scott Fontana, was at training camp. I think that's a fascinating question for him because Islam and Khabib have sparred hundreds of hours together. Who won those events at the end, right? Up in the lead up, right? I'm sure that Khabib won because Islam was coming up. Islam's the guy. I would love to see what it looks like now.
I'd bet Khabib. I just would.
Really?
I feel like there's a big brother thing. And the thing with Khabib is it's nice to be well-rounded, which definitely Islam seems like he's got the better hands. I mean, I was seeing some quotes this week from his teammates saying, "Oh, he's a better boxer than Dustin." I'm like, all right, calm down, cowboy. Let's take it easy on that. But I just think Khabib was so good at what he did from that standpoint that he's gonna get eventually just wear down. He probably knows all of his tricks. I just find him to just be a savvier fighter. And you mentioned Islam lost, already, and he also almost lost to a featherweight.
He did lose. Volk beat him.
He beat I don't want to hose down the guy's resume, but okay, great, you avenged it, but you got to avenge it on a guy for 10 days notice. So while they both had their little resume things, you could say that with Khabib with winning the belt against Al Quinta, but realistically, I did just see him very much what I thought. I thought he did lose to Volkanovski, but whether or not, he didn't dominate the fight by any stretch of the imagination, where we've never seen Khabib in that close quarters of a fight. Never.
Can I interject? What would the line be if they happen to fight in their primes, which is impossible? What would you guys line it?
Both guys in their prime? I think Khabib's favored because, like you said, we've seen Islam. Islam's lost a hand. We can at least agree that Islam in his career has lost a handful of rounds. Khabib lost 1, maybe 2 in his entire career. So if you're just talking about on paper and what I think it would be in Vegas, and you tell me what you think, BT, it's close. It's like Khabib minus 150.
Interesting.
I think it's heavier than that.
Really?
Yeah, I was thinking minus 250, something like that. I just think that you're talking about in his prime, the height of, you guys forget what this guy looked like. When he walked away, he looked like he was more unstoppable than ever. And he was doing that against Justin Gaethje. There's just still something about Islam this week, and I know that the odds are fat, but there's still something about me that's like Dustin can go in there and do this. I feel like he can. This is not an invincible monster he's going up against. Very good guy. Not saying he's bad. I'm not trying to say he's overrated even. I just think that he's vulnerable because I've seen him vulnerable.
So, Eric, I assume you like Islam in the Poirier fight.
Well, I mean, it's easy to say I like somebody as a minus 600 favorite, right?
Sure.
I could jump in and I guess I could say Poirier is a value bet, right? Here's my thing. I would bet Poirier at plus 700 by TKO, but do I think he could possibly win a decision? No. Do I think that he could win by decision? Absolutely not. So, why would I bet Poirier plus 400? I can get him 7-1 at TKO. Honestly, for me, I'm looking at a TKO bet. If I'm looking at Poirier, for me, I'm not, right. I'm staying away. As crazy as it sounds, I like Islam by decision. I've always bet Islam grapple wrestling to decision. That's the way that I look at it. I think that Islam has an easy path to victory here. I think that you just double legs. Poirier, we've seen BT knows we have seen the guillotines. They're ridiculous. That's nonstop.
I was trying to convince the guys. I was like, "Hey, do we throw $5 on plus 2,300 for him by submission?"
He's going to try. How many times did he try against Benoit Saint Denis?
He's going to try. It's going to be a terrible idea, though.
He was close against Khabib.
He was close against Khabib. He had Khabib in that guillotine.
Yeah, he did. That's his move. It's his move. I don't believe in guillotine. Here's the thing, and I'm sure that a lot of MMA savant in terms of betting would agree with me. I disagree with guillotine submissions as a tactic in terms of fighting. I train jiu-jitsu. I talk to a lot of people. Guillotine submissions drive me nuts anytime I see it. And Conor did it against Poirier, if you guys remember. In the third fight, Conor did against Poirier. It was guillotine submission. That was his game plan. And that's a major issue. Why? That's a major issue with him going forward. Why would you be going for guillotines in spots where you have? I mean, the chances of success in guillotines. I should personally do the statistics and find the percent of submissions that are guillotines. I'm pretty sure it's definitely one of the least common.
To your point, Conor lost that round that he had the guillotine.
100% easily.
Yeah, I mean, it's not a bad point. Although it is fun when your guy jumps guillotine that you've got money on by submission. You're like, squeeze, man, squeeze, and you jump off your futon, yell at your TV. But I get you. As far as success rate compared to maybe other submission attempts, maybe not the highest one.
No, definitely not. Definitely not. I disagree with the strategy as a whole. Why would you give up your back? You don't want to be in your back at any point in MMA. In jiu-jitsu, it's different. But in MMA, that's why the problem is, right? Because when you're training MMA, you're training wrestling, you're training striking, you're training jiu-jitsu. 3 separate things, right? And then, so when you're in an octagon, you're like, oh, I train this in jiu-jitsu so I can do it. It's not the same thing. You have to train all 3 at the same time.
One thing that you always do have to account for in matchups, Eric, and I think one of the things that made maybe Khabib a little different than Islam is I don't feel like Khabib would ever deviate off the game plan. Like, he always knew to get to his strengths and do it. But Islam has had some knockouts. He's shown that he does have hands. You see his camp talking a big game going into this matchup. Is there any element of, I'm going to try and beat Dustin at his own game, and you worry at all that's going to cost him? Because it really only takes one little check hook from Dustin Poirier, and all of a sudden it's game on because he's got you right where he wants you.
BT, that's such a good question. Honestly, it's a variable that you can't really account for.
I hope that'd be awesome if they stand up the whole time.
Man, that's I believe he's coached by Rafael Cordero. I could be wrong on that, but I believe that Islam's coach Rafael Cordero. I would hope that he's well coached enough to get to that point. I know Khabib's one of his top coaches. For me, it's so tough. Maybe he could strike with him long enough, but oh man, that's so hard to bet on. That's so hard to bet on for me. Like, I guess it plays to my point of decision. Like, if it isn't going well, right? If you strike for a round and you get knocked down in the first round, you have an easy path victory. 2, 3, 4, 5. You could go 4-1 and win. Yeah, you could go 2, 3, 4, 5 and win 4-1. Like, I guess it's the easiest path of victory. You can win by decision. That's why I it kind of feeds into my point where if you were to bet on this fight, which I'm not saying bet on a minus 600 favorite, don't even put it in parlays, but a plus 800 on Islam by decision is a fine bet. I love that bet. I bet Islam by decision almost every fight. I think that Dustin could have some success on the feet, but I don't think that it happens over 5 rounds, and I don't think he knocks him out.
Talk a little fighting with our boy Erich Richter of the New York Post. Let's move on to the co-main event that night. Sean Strickland takes on Paulo Costa. I got question marks, a lot of them, about both these guys. Let's start on the side of Sean Strickland. Do we know if he's the guy that fought Izzy that night that looked like he could have beat anybody on planet Earth? Is that just him at his best, or do we really think that he's that good of a fighter? What are your thoughts on Strickland?
I'm not a Strickland fan at all, actually. I bet Dricus du Plessis, and yeah, it was a close decision. A lot of split decisions. I agree with the decision personally. Obviously, I had money on it, so I have a little bit of a biased opinion. For me, I also bet Paulo Costa against Robert Whittaker. I had both. So for me, I'm a believer in his opponent, and I'm a disbeliever in Sean Strickland. I think that's kind of where I'm at on it. For me, I think that Paulo Costa is a better athlete, and that's a fact. I mean, just look at their bodies, right? And I think that Sean Strickland is a minus 230 favorite because of his volume, which is a major piece, right? And it's a 5-round fight. Don't forget that. It's a huge piece of this 5-round fight, and odds makers are not expected to go to distance. Plus 154 on goes the distance. I think that Costa at his best is yellow in the Yoel Romero fight, right? We saw that. But I mean, we've seen issues, right? And we've seen issues in volume. We've seen issues in the amount of damage I takes. I loved what I saw actually in his loss against Whittaker. I thought he was awesome. Didn't love what I saw against Marvin Vittori, and that's what odds makers are expecting. For me, I think the odds are wide here, and you guys might think I'm crazy in a 5-round fight to expect Strickland to lose in a fight, but I see value here on Costa at plus 190. I think that he's a harder hitter, and I think that we judge on damage. And I am not a believer at all in Strickland as a top tier contender. I think maybe he can point his way to a decision, but I think the damage is there to the point where plus 180 is value. And I would bet, Costa wins in over 2 rounds, in the plus 400 range. I don't hate Costa at plus 800 by decision. And I know nobody wants to see decisions. I know that I'm talking 2 decisions in the co-main and main, and I'm not trying to be that guy. But that's where I'm at. Honestly, I'm not a big Strickland fan. I never have been.
You were in the building for Jailton Almeida's last fight, where he seemed like he was maybe going to be the next heavyweight that was coming on up. Had an unfortunate loss to Curtis Blades. How much do you like his chances bouncing back? Because he is still a pretty sizable favorite in this fight against Romanov.
Yeah, tough one. It's a tough one. He's so much smaller, right? But he's such a good grappler. Tough spot. Honestly, I would honestly be willing to stay away. I'll be honest. Romanov gasses, so I guess I'd be looking at round 2 and round 3 props on that. Romanov's cardio stinks, respectfully, of course.
Very respectful.
I would be looking at, yeah, of course. I would be looking at Almeida, maybe round 3 submission. You might get like 10-1 on something like that. Yeah, Jailton. I love Jailton Almeida. I actually had to bet on him to win the UFC title earlier this year. It's just, he lost that fight, and it kind of went downhill from there.
Yeah. I love you, bud. You can go ahead and tear that ticket on up. That ain't happening. He maybe had an outside shot because he had a little bit of hype behind him, and he was fun. But yeah, I don't see that one happening.
Right now, Almeida to win in round 3 is plus 900. So I said 10-1. You get a little bit less than that. That's probably where I'd be maybe a flyer on that, but it's really hard to bet. Romanov's tough. Romanov, he's a big guy. He's really big.
Erich Richter, The Post. We love it when you stop by, man. We'll do it again soon. Thanks so much.
Thank you, guys. Appreciate you.
So I'm with him on a lot of the stuff that he said. Like, I'm on the same side, I guess, except for the Sean Strickland stuff, because I was actually so impressed by Sean Strickland against Izzy that it's either one of two things. Strickland's better than I thought I was, or Izzy's just pretty much done, BT. And I don't think he's done. I think Izzy still has a little bit of gas left in the tank.
Yeah, I think Izzy's. Yeah, I agree with Eric too. Like, I don't think that it's a case of Izzy being done either. The one thing that I would say is, yeah, the idea of it being a 5-round fight, that's the thing that just leans Strickland for me. I'm not the biggest Sean Strickland fan either. That just makes to me seem like, all right, that's his playpen. So if he gets out of whatever whatever flurries he's going to get from Paulo Costa, I feel like Sean's just going to be built for that. But we'll find out, man. It's a hell of a matchup, and it'll be interesting to see how it plays out.
I thought I just heard somebody's voice in the background. Who the F was that guy? Oh, that was our boy, Eric. Eric, we'll catch up soon. BT, I'll see you on the other side. Jake, maybe. I got a Levine's list for you coming up next, right here on Tapped Out.
Tapped Out with Brendan Tobin and Sean Levine on the BetQL Network.
What's good? Hopefully you're having a fun and relaxing Saturday night. Not a lot of stuff going on in the world of fighting, but that doesn't mean we won't talk about it and make some money along the way. Next week is UFC 302. We've been talking about that a lot. That's Islam versus Dustin Poirier. There's a certain bet on that card that I think everybody should lay down a little bit of money on. We'll talk about that at the top of the next hour, but they call me the sports machine, and that's maybe the worst nickname in the history of radio. So when it comes to nicknames and bad ones, BT, I got it. But there have been some pretty bad ones in the history of the UFC. Let's talk about the bad ones before we get to today's Levine's list, which is the 5 best nicknames of all time. Quiz time, bud. Do you remember John Jones' original nickname way back in the day before he was Bones?
I do not.
He was John Sexual Chocolate Jones. You can't make that up.
Bone. Yeah, Bones is better, and it's also kind of straight to the point with that one.
It is. It really, it really is better, isn't it? Currently, some other bad nicknames in the UFC. How about Brandon Moreno? Great fighter, terrible nickname. The Assassin Baby? I mean, dude, what? How do they even let you get away with that? Carla Esparza, remember her nickname?
She's Cookie Monster, isn't it?
It's Cookie Monster, indeed. A fighter named Cookie Monster. You like it because
I think it's adorable.
Cookies. Yeah, I bet you do think
I do like cookies. I also think it's an adorable name.
I'm a big fan of Cookie Monster. He's one of my top 3 favorite Sesame Street characters. Right there behind Snuffleupagus and Oscar. Still a terrible nickname for a UFC fighter.
You got a Big Bird in top 3?
Nah, Big Bird was overrated. How about... Yeah, a little overrated. I mean, as far as birds go, he was cool, but a little bit overrated.
There's no brand without him.
UFC nicknames. They would have been just fine without Big Bird, dude. Ernie and Bert carried that show. Can we move on? These have to be the weirdest nicknames in UFC history. Ian McCall, remember him? That was Uncle Creepy.
Great nickname.
How about the lesser-known Rick the Ginger with Intent to Injure, Pfeiffer? He had a couple of big wins in the UFC. Everybody remembers Smiling Sam Alvey. He's had some legal troubles recently, so I don't want to say his name too much, but it's a pretty cool nickname. Violent Bob Ross. Remember Luis Pena?
Yeah, he has a lot. He lives down here. Yeah. He's been picked up by Broward PD a few times.
Do you have a fighter with a favorite nickname of all time? I feel like you're basic. I feel like you're about to say Notorious or like I know you're
but I like you
Ruthless.
Actually. No, I'm not a big fan of Ruthless. You know which nickname I actually wasn't a fan of, but I love the fighter? I don't love Dustin the Diamond Poirier. I thought it was kind of weird because I'm like, you're doing a playoff of Screech from Saved by the Bell. Rest in peace, of course. I always found that to be funny, strange, and it was kind of before Dustin's rise. I remember like watching it, and I'm like, Dustin the Diamond Poirier, like Screech. Like when I first got into UFC, I always thought that was weird. I guess now it's cool because you're one of the best fighters of all time. But I wasn't a fan of the Diamond because I thought it'd be strange to have your nickname as a play off of a nerd character in school and Saved by the Bell.
First of all, when you talk about Screech, you put some respect on that name. And second of all, Screech got in the ring one time. Remember he threw down with, I think it was Danny Bonaducci. It was like one of those celebrity. I think that's who it was back in the day. Like you said, rest in peace to Screech. All right. These aren't quite my favorite top 5. We'll get to Levine's list here in just a couple of minutes, but these are some great nicknames worthy of honorable mention. Stephen Wonderboy Thompson. When I asked Wonderboy, remember we had him on, and I asked him how he got his nickname? I was a little bit worried that it was like a corny, generic question. He gave us a great response. Remember what he said? He said it was like one of his first karate tournaments, and there was a coach that they had to have nicknames because all the kids did, and he didn't know what to call him, so he just said he was the Wonder Boy, and it stuck with him. That's pretty cool. I like Wonder Boy Thompson. And
it's
also,
cool. It also fooled us on his age for like a good 6 years. We were all like, how old is he? We all were sitting here thinking he was in his 20s.
Is he not? How old's Wonder Boy?
He's like 40 now, dude. He's a man. Like Mike Dungy would say.
Dude looks like he's 28 years old. He looks phenomenal. And I'll keep calling him Wonder Boy. Your guy Gamebred Masvidal, pretty cool nickname. Curtis Razor Blades, we talked about him earlier. We also mentioned Michael Venom Page. That one just makes a lot of sense, right? Because you get the cool nickname and you get the MVP to go along with it. That one's good. Back in the day, the Iceman, Chuck Liddell, that feels like it fit him. That's absolutely iconic. Perfect. How about, again, going back in the day, I got a good one for you, BT. How about Shogun, Mauricio Hua? That's scary as hell.
Yeah, that's a great nickname. That's a great name. Fedor. I'm looking right now. I'm like, who's got like the worst nickname going right now? Like, isn't Ian Gary's The Future? That's a terrible nickname.
It's not terrible. Nickname. It's better than the Cookie nickname. Monster. The Future's not terrible.
It's so generic.
It feels a little unoriginal.
For him to be like as thinking he's gonna be like this next thing, like The Future stinks as a nickname. You know who else had a bad nickname?
Who?
I'll say it. Khabib. Eagle, stupid nickname.
Eagle's terrible. Eagle's
a terrible nickname.
Eagle's awful. But while we're talking about good ones, I feel like there's one more I have to throw in there.
Like he should have been the Bear.
1,000,000% he should have been the Bear.
Yeah.
Why?
The Eagle's
I feel like you've got enough contacts and you've been in this game long enough where during his career you could have reached out to somebody and said, hey, you got to change that nickname. Because it's happened a few times. If you think about it.
You think
go back to Diego Sanchez? Remember he went from the dream to the nightmare? I told you John Jones changed his nickname. It happens more often than you'd think.
Yeah, I Chase Hooper was because he started off before he was, he started off as a pro at 19. He was the teenage dream. Then he got to 20. He just dropped. He's just the dream.
He's just the dream. That's what I'm saying. I think that you've got enough influence where, at least on this show going forward, we shall refer to Khabib as the Bear and not the Eagle. You're absolutely right. And then before I get to my list, the Black Beast, Derek Lewis. I mean, what a great nickname. The Black Beast. He fits it absolutely perfectly. All right, here we go from 5 to 1, the best nicknames in UFC history. You know I love me a good list. Here we go. Today's Levine's list. I cheated. I've got 2 for number 5. There's a tie. Thug, Rose, Namajunas. I mean, if you saw Rose in street clothes, just in downtown Denver where she lives, and you didn't know that she was a UFC fighter, you wouldn't think that that girl was called Thug at all. Yet when you watch her fight, BT, it makes a lot of sense why she's called Thug Rose.
Anytime you refer to somebody more by their nickname than you do their name, you have a great nickname. So people don't really refer to her as Rose or Rose Namajunas. They call her Thug Rose.
That's so sick, just to have people call you Thug Rose. And also tied at number 5 with the best nickname, El Kukui. If you go back to when he really was that scary monster, El Kukui, and it's sad because the last few years, we've really had some guys, some all-time favorite fighters, go out not near the top of their game. And I'm thinking of El Kukui, and I'm thinking of actually, ironically, the next guy on this list with the fourth best nickname in UFC history, Cowboy, Donald Cerrone. Yeah, it's not an original nickname, but it fits him perfect. And you want to talk about a lot of people probably don't even necessarily know his full name, but when they see him, they go, oh, that's that fighter that they call Cowboy. Unfortunately, you think of both the end of El Kukui and Cowboy's careers. I think those dudes lost like 15, and I'm not making this up. I think they lost like 15 fights combined at the end of their careers. Kind of sad.
Still a great nickname, though. Still a great nickname.
Exactly. And that is the point of today's Levine's list.
Jake has a great one, too, by the way, because Paige Van Zandt fights today. 12-gauge Paige is a great nickname. He's spot on about
12-gauge Paige is good. Jake also, by the way, threw in there Gracie Hunter, which is another good nickname, but very specific. When you're fighting a Gracie, it's awesome. When you're fighting a Smith or a Jones, it's like, who? The Gracie Hunter? But yeah, 12-gauge Paige, pretty damn cool. And while we're talking about female fighters and nicknames, I don't think it was her official nickname, but friend of the show, Joanna Jędrzejczyk. When she refers to herself as the Boogie Woman, my skin crawls.
You love her.
Oh, I love
her. Well, let me, speaking of unofficial nicknames, because I don't want to step on your list, so if I'm spoiling it, sorry. But Chael Sonnen, do you refer to him as the American Gangster? Because I feel like everybody refers to him as the bad guy now. Like, I don't think anybody refers to him as the American Gangster. I think everybody refers to Chael as you either call him Uncle Chael or you refer to him as the bad guy.
That's the thing. He's got a little bit of Shaquille O'Neal going on where it's like, wait, is that Aristotle? Is that the Big Ticket? Is that the Big Diesel? Is that Superman? You know what I mean? Once you get more than two, screw you, dude. I'm just calling you by your first name. At this point, he's just Chael Sonnen or Uncle Chael to those that care. All right, we've made our way up to number 3 best nicknames in UFC history on today's Levine's list. Number 3, how about Carlos Condit, who's a little bit up and down in his career. In his prime, he was awesome, but he was the natural born killer. That's just scary. When Bruce Buffer says you're fighting the natural born killer, BT, it's going to be a long night in the octagon.
Lived up to it, dude. That guy fought violent, was an absolute savage. Him versus Robbie Lawler, man.
Great fight. Classic fight. Lots of blood still on that octagon. At number 2, a guy that, again, got knocked out a couple of times at the end of his career, but I'm not going to hold it against him because much like Cowboy lived up to his nickname, nobody knows this guy's real name. They call him the Korean Zombie. That, of course, is Chan Sung Jung. Legitimately, is there a fighter you would say that more people know his nickname and nobody knows his real name?
Yeah, I would agree with that. And then, of course, just had like the greatest send off ever. Like I still get teary eyed if I ever just want to feel in that mood, like them playing the Cranberries, but them sing it after he got knocked out by Max Holloway. Whew, so good.
Incredible. You call them the Goosies. Again, I get it just talking about it. And then number 1, the best and scariest nickname in the history of the UFC was owned by former champion Vanderlei Silva. You know him as the Axe Murderer. The Axe Murderer? Are you kidding me, dude? I'd make the walk and I'd turn right around and go back into the locker room if I'm fighting the freaking Axe Murderer. All right, coming up on the other side, we take a deep dive in the UFC 302, and there's one bet that everybody listening should make if you're trying to make some money next week. I'll tell you what it is. Keep it right here. It's Tapped Out on the BetQL Network. Up about some of the other fights. Alex Morono, BT, a minus 225 favorite against the hybrid Nico Price at plus 185. Like 2 or 3 years ago, Nico Price was this white hot prospect. He's just not that guy anymore. I think Morono wins this fight. I think he knocks his ass out.
Damn, your rat's off a ship like that already, huh?
Yeah, I'm out. Yeah, I'm off. See you.
Poof. You know, I gotta tell you, you really do seem like your rat's off a ship on guys pretty quickly. You're sitting here hosing down Jamal. Doesn't take much for you. Doesn't take much for you. Hosing down Jamal Hill. You know, immediately you're like, guy should basically go, try a career in hockey or something like that. I don't know.
Yeah, loyalty's always been an issue for me, and certainly is when it comes to my fighters. You lose a fight, once you're not undefeated, dude, I'm done with you.
Man. Wow. It's like you're like the old school boxer. You're like the old school the boxing fans. Like once he's got a loss, he's done.
That's right.
Never be back.
Sounds like you like Nico Price as the underdog, or you just like talking smack on me, one or the other.
Nah, I totally agree with you. I'm going with Moreno.
That's what I thought. Jake, tell me I'm right.
Yeah, you're right. This is not Are You Going to Fight Me? This is Best Bets, and the best bet to make is Moroto.
Okay, see, we have fun here, but in the long run, we're all trying to make some money also here, and Nico Price hasn't been great when it comes to, his job fighting. Grant Dawson, I've watched him train. He is great, minus 375. Doesn't fight often enough, gets injured quite a bit. Taking on Joe Selecki at plus 270. I hate paying anything more than like minus 300 just based on the sport that we love, right? It's mixed martial arts. Anything could happen. But I actually think these odds are about right, BT, at minus 375. I'm going to try to pin the tail on the donkey and find a method, but I do think Grant Dawson wins and finishes this fight.
Yeah, that'd be one where I'd like to once method odds come around next week for like all the undercard stuff, that's probably where I would pin it instead of trying to pay that hefty a price for it. But
that's a lot. Jake?
Yeah, you can't pay that big a price, but you got to put some value in the fact that Grant Dawson told multiple media members he's going for a takedown. Joe Selecki better be ready for a takedown or he's going to lose the fight. And I think that's interesting because Selecki's a black belt in jiu-jitsu. I talked to Selecki in the lead up to this fight. He's ready for it. He's excited for a grappling affair. So I don't know. I think there actually might be some value on Selecki as an underdog just because of how good a grappler he is too. But overall, yeah, I think a Dawson by submission or decision is the likely way this is going to go.
I'm with you. I think Grant Dawson is the ground. I think he chokes him out. What's up, BT?
You ever wish when you were talking to a fighter, Jake, that just be honest with you and be like, you know what, I'm not ready for this fight.
I got no chance.
They'll never say it.
I got no shot. I'm really cramming to make weight here. I don't feel like this hasn't been my best camp, to be honest with you.
It's incredible how they're all on weight during fight week until they hit the scale.
Oh, it's the best camp they've ever had. They're feeling great, every single one of them. But what else are you going to say? You're getting locked in a cage with another trained killer. All right, we're on our way up this 302 card, boys. Kevin Holland is back. Again, heavy favorite now that I look at the BetMGM odds. Minus 275, and he's fighting a guy that has every single vowel in his last name. This is ridiculous. Oleksiujuzek. And I've got a rule. If you've got every vowel, I don't say your name. I say the first letter. Michael O is the underdog at plus 210. Jake, you can take this one first. Against Kevin Holland at minus 275. Where's your money going?
Michael Ojokashik, I think, something like that.
No,
it was called King Michael. That's his nickname, okay. King Michael. King Michael's going to win, bro. He's going to win. This underdog money is live. He is a beast. He's a brawler. He's coming off a loss. I think it's his first loss in the UFC, or at least in like 4 or 5 fights. So I'm all over King Michael at this one. They are disrespecting my boy.
BT, you want the guy's name who's easy to pronounce, or the guy who I'd have to break it down syllable by syllable and I'd still screw it up? Who's winning this fight?
I'm just a little bit like we're talking about, how much are you supposed to stay on guys and how much are you supposed to believe in them? I really don't know what to make of Kevin Holland, to be honest with you. He loses the debut for MVP. He loses to Jack Della Maddalena. So the guys, he's got a really tough strength of schedule. He's lost to Kevin Holland. He's lost to Wonder Boy in a very weird but great back and forth between them. This one feels to me very much like they're setting Kevin Holland up for like a get right. Hey, you can come out here. This guy should be made for you. And because when they have guys who are as popular as Kevin Holland, they throw in cards. I'm always feeling like after a couple losses, they're going to give him a winnable one because they want to keep him at the level of, hey, we want to keep this kind of card and it means something because Kevin Holland is a great promoter for the sport. He's a great talker. He will stir up trouble. He'll bring attention to fight week. It feels very much like kind of a do or die if he's ever going to be back into the real contendership. So I'm going to go with Kevin Holland, knowing this is a bit of a desperation fight for him. And I'm going to take him by KO because it looks like right now in some books you can get that about plus 250. So I'm going to say he gets the finish.
When I first saw this, I thought that he was fighting former Clipper Michael Olowokandi. And I think Kevin Holland would be a huge favorite to win that particular fight. What don't you know about Kevin Holland? Like, to me, he is what he is. And I hate it when people say that, but he is Bobby Green. He is Derek Lewis. He's fun. He talks. He's had some highlights, but he's not a champion. Like, what are your questions at this point about Kevin Holland?
My big question is just, I guess it is just, is he going to ever hit another level, or is he just going to be what he is? Like he's not over the hill yet. He's going to be 32, which is still in your fighter prime. I think once you start hitting, like we've seen, the magic number there is really like 35 is when you start wondering if a guy is over it. But like, look, he doesn't. I think for him, one of the things you love about him is he's a very active fighter. They usually will give him sometimes some weird matchups. He's taken on. There's really no bums that he's taken on over the last going back to 2020. Like he's been taking when he's knocking out Jacare from his back, like he's taken on a lot of beasts. So yeah, I agree with you. He's probably not going to be champion, but I also don't like there's a level of champion to bum, and I don't think like I think that he still has wins in him. It's just and so I feel like this is him taking a step below, and I think he can get a win here.
We were talking about best UFC nicknames of all time, and I don't think this makes one of those lists, but it's kind of a fun one. Jake the Rude Boy steps back into the octagon. Randy Brown minus 185 versus Easy D at a plus 150 dog. Where's your money going?
I'm going with Randy Brown. Randy Brown trains up here in Philly at Marquez MMA sometimes. I've met him a few times. Good guy, but he's also just a very rangy, talented, technical striker. And Easy D, very wild, chaotic. We see him rush in, do some crazy stuff in fights. I don't think Randy's the kind of lengthy fighter to do that against. So I like the favorite. And what are the odds? Like minus 180 or something like that? I'll bet.
Yeah,
I'll
minus
bet Randy
185 for the Rude Boy, Randy Brown.
Cash it.
BT?
Same with you. I mean, he's coming off one of the better knockouts of the year. And so I'm thinking that he's riding high right now. I'm going to go with him too.
3 for 3. I like Randy Brown by knockout.
Yeah, man.
Right. Working our way up. 3 fights left. UFC 302 next week. We'll get to Islam versus Dustin Poirier in a couple of minutes. Jailton Almeida. Lots of hype. Lots of highlights. Didn't look great last time out. Minus 275. Taking on Alexander Romanov at plus 210. BT, are you still on the Jailton Almeida train?
I am. I think that he's going to bounce back here. I think that was, kind of your lesson on the bright lights, because you think, oh, I got this guy. I'm smoking everybody. I got Curtis Blades. And as we were talking about last week with the Curtis Blades thing, it's like Curtis Blades is really, really good and probably going to beat you if you don't have vicious knockout power. That's basically his only kryptonite. And so he gets back in there. He fixes up the mistakes that he had after starting off that fight strong against Curtis Blades. I think that this is a good lesson, good bounce back for him. I think he wins by sub. You can get that still at like just under 2-1 right now. So I will go with Almeida by sub.
Jake, you still on the Almeida train?
Yeah, especially in this fight. This is just a good matchup for him. Romanov's one of my favorite heavyweights. He was very exciting when he came on. We saw him on top of people ground pounding like Donkey Kong. It was awesome, but he gasses really easily. He's very open. We're talking about fighters never saying, BT, in an interview that they're not ready, that they're having a bad camp. Romanov will tell you straight up, he has been eaten. He has been gassed. He's not ready. So, no, I don't like Romanov in this one. I think Almeida in rounds 1 through 3 is the bet to make. The methods aren't out yet, but he's going to finish him.
Oh, no, screw that. There's nothing more than I love as an honest man. You don't see a lot of those these days.
Oh, he's honest, boy. He's honest.
He'll tell me, I'm going to go in there and I'm going to be overweight and I'm going to smoke some cigarettes on the walkout. I'm probably going to get knocked out. There's no way you should bet on me. That's why I'm going to empty my piggy bank on this dude, Alexander Romanov. And again, Jailton Almeida did show us that he is susceptible, right? He can come out there and lose and fight a boring fight, which I didn't think was possible at the beginning of his career. So I don't care if he's packing a whole pack of heaters on the way in. I'm going to go ahead and take me some Romanov at underdog plus 210 money. All right, boys, we got 2 fights. The co-main and the main. Let's start with Sean Strickland and Paulo Costa. You can get Costa at plus 170. Sean Strickland, is he still Tarzan, by the way? Talk a lot about nicknames. He was Tarzan when he had the hair. I don't think he's been called Tarzan now for years. Anyway, minus 210 for the favorite Strickland. A lot of people have a lot of varying opinions on that guy. Like, we brought on Erich Richter from New York Post earlier, and he, not in these words, basically said Sean Strickland sucks and he's overrated. I said the same thing, like, I remember a year and a half ago, and then I had to eat my words when he beat up Israel Adesanya and took all of my money. Jake, do we know how good Sean Strickland is, and is he going to beat Paulo Costa as a minus 210 favorite next week?
Yeah, I think Sean Strickland is, I mean, he was just your champion, and he very well could still be your champion if one judge saw one round differently.
True.
So I think Strickland's great. I don't think his style is as exciting as Apollo Costa, but the Philly shell where he keeps it tight, the jabs, the constant forward pressure, it works. It got him a belt against one of the best strikers in the entire world. This is an interesting fight, though, because Sean has his style, he has his pace, he has the way he likes to fight. Costa's the complete opposite. He is a firecracker. He explodes. He also comes forward nonstop. I don't know how Strickland's going to react to Paulo Costa doing what Paulo Costa does best. We saw it against everyone he's fought. Whitaker, Romero, Adesanya. He always has some tricks up his sleeve and is very explosive. So if Strickland can deal with that, like we have seen him doing before, he should control the fight. His striking should do it for him. But it's a tough call. And Costa might be worth some underdog money because he's always got that chance.
Us Seans really do have style now that you pointed out. Strickland, O'Malley, me. Strickland minus 210, Paulo Costa plus 170 BT. Where's your money going next week?
You know, to be honest with you, I think this is one of the easiest calls in recent memory. I think this is easily. I think it's Sean Strickland by decision. Most of his fights go to decision. He's usually winning by decision. You guys want to know the last time Paulo Costa won by TKO? Because he ain't winning a decision, a 5-round decision against Sean. 2018. You want to know who it was?
Tell me.
Uriah Hall.
Guy before
that, TKO. You want to know who that was before that?
Tell me.
Johnny Hendricks. These are the likes of the last guys that
Johnny
Paulo Costa has actually. Those are the last two guys that Paulo Costa has stopped. No, I'm not. I think that he's all flash. He's all style. Sean Strickland's been at the top of the sport. We've seen what he's done to Izzy. 5-round fight. If it was a 3-round fight, hey, maybe you could talk me into gas on the pedal. Something crazy happens. 5-round fight. Sean Strickland should be a layup for him.
All right, I'll trail you on that one. Sounds good to me. Let's make some money on that one, boys. Main event, Islam minus 600 versus Dustin Poirier plus 425. I'll start with this one first. How can you not put money down on Dustin Poirier at plus 425? We talked earlier. It's not like Islam is undefeated. He's got knocked out. It's been a while. It's not like recently he hasn't been in close fights. On this show, we all think that he lost his fight against Volkanovski. So I'm not exactly sure why he's such a heavy favorite against a guy that's as live as any wire has ever been in Dustin Poirier. When you talk about resumes, I was looking at Justin Gaethje's resume the other day because I'm a nerd and when I can't sleep, I don't count cheap or anything. I look up UFC stuff. And Gaethje's resume was so really crazy. And then I looked at Max Holloway's and then I looked at Connor's. Maybe better than all those guys is Dustin Poirier. That guy's fought absolutely everybody. He's not scared of Islam Makhachev. He's fought better fighters than that guy. So plus 425, you got to lay a little bit of money down on that. That's what I say. We'll hear from the guys on the other side about the main event, and then we'll get into You Gonna Fight Me. A lot left coming up here. We appreciate you checking us out. It's Tapped Out on the BetQL Network.
Levine will step into the cage with Brendan Tobin in Are You Gonna Fight Me?
I'm gonna fight your ass.
Here on Tapped Out.
That's right, fight me like a man.
Only on the BetQL Network.
You know the rules. I want a good, clean fight. When I tell you to break, I want you to step back out my command and break. Now go back to the corner and come out fighting at the bell.
Put him up. Put him up. I'll meet you in the middle of the ring. I'm not going to lie. I'm a little bit distracted right now because I'm trying to get in a last-minute bet on this Celtics-Pacers game. BT, you with me? Celtics are going to roll them up like a joint at a frat party tonight, aren't they?
I would think so. You know, they have let their guard down a couple times in these playoffs. McConnell's been really good, so I imagine he'll get more time with Halliburton. But they should. I mean, like they've had the easiest red carpet to the finals I can remember since LeBron when he had to go through like the Hawks and the Raptors a couple of years back.
Well, your team could have made it more difficult on them if they would have won and kept advancing.
And he was hurt, dude. He was hurt. What are you supposed to? By the end of it, Patty Mills was getting significant minutes for the Heat. What do you want me to do?
I guess get on the court. It sounds like you were almost on. All right, here we go. You're gonna fight me. If Connor beats Michael Chandler, and we can take a little bit of time on this one because I think this one's interesting. The biggest possible fight for him next would be, wait for it, Nate 3. Obviously, that means Nate Diaz would have to re-sign with the UFC, but at some point we got to get that. I don't know if either one of those guys is still in their prime, but I still think the interest level would be there. You're going to fight me if I say if Conor beats Chandler, then the biggest possible next Conor McGregor fight would be Nate Diaz.
Man, I actually, surprisingly, if you would have asked me this a couple months back, I probably would have agreed with you. But I think there's a few fights that you could make for Conor. If Conor wins bigger fights than Nate Diaz right now, first we got to see what's going to happen with Nate and Jorge in their boxing match. Nate Diaz did lose to Jake Paul. But if Dustin Poirier or Islam wins the belt and he could actually make 155 and they fought Conor for the title, I think either one of those would be bigger than Nate right now. Conor actually going for a championship if he beats Michael Chandler. Again, that is predicated upon he could actually make 155 pounds. They could fight for the belt, so that's a big if. Max Holloway being as hot as he is right now,
for his BMF
that's
belt.
Up there. Yeah, for his BMF belt, that's absolutely up there right now. And then now there's been this back and forth between Sugar Sean O'Malley. Now, again, that's a big question of weight. Where do they do it at? What would Sean come do it at? He's a 135 champion. Even asking Conor to make 155 seems like a bit of an ask right now. So you're going to ask Sean O'Malley to come up 3 weight classes. That's a little irresponsible. But if they could make it, yeah, that's up there as well. So I love the Nate Diaz fight. I would definitely buy it. But I think there are plenty of options that I think can rival it right now.
You're good, man. You're really good. You like
Thank
fighting,
you.
don't you? The only thing I would disagree with that answer is the Dustin Poirier thing. Like, if you want to say that fighting Max would be bigger for the BMF belt, okay. Islam, because he could avenge the Khabib loss, that'd be huge. O'Malley would probably be the biggest UFC fight of all time. I don't know how realistic that actually is. The Dustin fight, nobody wants to see that again, dude.
It needs the belt. Well, it needs the belt. If the belt's on the line, it changes things. I agree with you. I don't need to see it just to see it. But if Dustin is the champion and Conor has a chance to win the belt, that's what changes it. But it's also, look, if he does it against Islam, then that's obviously a storyline too with the whole Khabib thing. So obviously that's sexy. You could maybe even argue that's a bigger one. I just think that Dustin's a bigger star.
The UFC would love somehow to have Conor at the end of his career, and this isn't going to happen, this is wishful thinking, fight all these guys. That would be predicated on him keep winning, but they would love to get a Nate 3 and a Max for his BMF and then finish it off with like a big rendezvous grand finale against still Sugar Sean O'Malley. Again, this is just fun fodder. It wouldn't happen, but I mean, that payday for everybody would be, the UFC would be back.
Well, I don't know how responsible this is because it was one of these. First of all, Twitter, MMA Twitter right now is as much of a chaotic cluster bleep as I could ever remember it. It's just a hellhole. But there are rumors, and then rumors that Conor threw out there again that Khabib, as he says, quote, owes his bollocks to the Russian government. And if you could get Khabib out of retirement because he does owe said bullocks to the Russian government, Conor gets a win, and the rematch against Khabib doesn't even need to be for the belt. Do it at whatever weight they want to do it. I mean, that would be obviously huge. I don't know how Khabib feels about that because it's kind of like you're going back to the well for a Conor fight. But that's obviously, I think, with how much those guys hate each other, that's probably the biggest thing he could do. If he does owe his bullocks to the Russian government.
That many options in your life, like that many, if you're Conor McGregor. Now, this is all, again, you have to win, which makes sense why you got Michael Chandler, because it feels like if you got any of these other guys, you'd be a pretty big underdog. You fight Michael Chandler at even money, you win that fight, and then Conor will get a pick. So it is kind of curious which way he will go, only because of that, and it's good for the show, and it's good for the sport, and it's good for the entertainment. I want Conor to win. I'll probably end up putting a little bit of money the other way because something tells me Chandler's going to win that fight. But for the sake of the goodness of it, I want Conor to win. All right,
absolutely.
A guy that's,
I don't think there's anything bigger for the sport period, than that guy winning. Like, it would be a monster, especially, because even his last one against Cowboy, we were all like, all right, that fight kind of stunk, like him with the shoulder. Like, there's no way Michael Chandler, win or lose, there's no shot this fight's going to be boring. There's no shot. It's going to be a great fight.
And if he wins, think about the conversation that it sets up, the one that we're having right now. If that actually is on the table, that'll be exciting. That'll get Nate's name back in it. Maybe Khabib throws his name, like you said, back in the hat. Maybe Islam says, no, screw it. I'm the new Khabib. I want to fight that guy. Maybe Max gets really loud and says, let's see who the real BMF is. Maybe Dustin goes, you want to talk about me, wife? Let's fight again. Yeah, that's options are great in life, and this dude has a lot of them. All right, not a lot of options left when it comes to fighting for Greg Hardy. I don't know if you saw this, but he got knocked out again just last night. In hindsight, he was a much better football player than a fighter. You're going to fight me?
Oh, he was, look, very, very fascinating individual to stand next to. I've stood next to Greg Hardy a few times. I wouldn't want to mess with him. But as far as professional fighters go, he was awful.
Okay, how do you really feel about him, though?
Awful. I mean, like, dude, he won, like, I think the most respectful thing he probably did, like, the height of his career was knocking out Austin Lane on the Contender Series, which was obviously, like, blew him up. They threw him on every ESPN2 co-main event that they could. They kept throwing Greg Hardy out there very shamelessly, by the way. Not the best look for the UFC in the history of the sport. But I would say probably the height of his career was losing a decision to our boy Volkov? Like, that's probably, and did it, I think, like on 10 days notice. Like, that to me was the height of Greg Hardy. Like, like the first time we could actually step back and be like, all right, respect. You went with an actual legitimate fighter, a legitimate contender. You went the distance with him. I think that was after all the asthma gate where, like, he took an inhaler in the middle of rounds, which you're not allowed to do. Just every one of his fights had something either lost embarrassingly or he had something really weird happen to his fights that, like, ended in disqualification or a no contest. So, yeah, not a good fighter. Very good football player. Doesn't seem like his baggage would make him out to be a very great guy.
That was unbelievable when he hit the inhaler in the middle of the fight. I mean, your head coach of the Miami Dolphins. Doesn't he kind of like to hit some stuff in the middle of the game sometimes?
No. That was a pen. And it was very cold outside, all right? He was not vaping in the middle of a fight.
Oh.
In the middle of a football
some people call their vape a pen. I'm not saying. I'm just saying. A Brendan Tobin, Sports Machine, Sean Levine here on the BetQL Network, talking fighting, apparently talking little conspiracy theories also. Tyson Fury. Fun show last week because we got to kind of talk along that fight against Usyk. Afterwards, I don't know if you saw, Fury came out and said that he did enough, that he thought that he did enough to win the fight. I don't know if that's just fodder or if he actually believes that, if maybe he was a little bit punch drunk. You're going to fight me if I say, and I rewatched it, by the way. I think they got it right. Usyk clearly won that fight.
Yeah, I honestly think it's crazy that a judge had it for Tyson Fury. The one thing I didn't like that Tyson Fury came out afterwards, and mind you, he was probably pretty hurt because the referee very likely saved him from the bell in that ninth round where he was knocked down as it was a standing count. Yeah, the ropes held him up. So mind you, that was all going on live while we were on the air. I think if anything, he probably got a break that wasn't a stopped fight. I didn't like the fact that he said to Usyk, he got the nod because of the war. Like, I thought that was pretty lame for a really good back and forth between them. The question is, man, like with Tyson Fury, we know how hard he is on his body. This was a big thing with Ricky Hatton, like you go up in weight, you go down in weight, you fluctuate all the time. Little different because he is a heavyweight, but man, he's taking a lot of vicious shots. You think about the Wilder fights, you think about you think about what happened against Francis Ngannou, where he was really, really hurt there. He looked very, very dazed and confused against Alexander Usyk. So wishing people Happy New Year after the fight. At last I checked, it was May 25th. So you got to wonder with Tyson Fury, has it been a few too many? Has it been a few too many fights? Does he need to take significant time off? But because I know he invoked his rematch clause this week, so they'll probably end up fighting in October, but I don't really know what's going to happen the next time around outside of, him trying to outmuscle Usyk, and that was one of the things that really threw you in this fight was that Usyk, that leaning on him and trying to do what he did against Wilder, even while having 40 pounds on Usyk, wasn't able to do it. Usyk shrugged him off, threw him into the ropes, and started teeing off again. So I don't know what his plan B is in a rematch against Alexander Usyk.
It's always a good segment when you bring up Ricky Fatton. Do you think that how heavy of a favorite will Usyk be in the rematch that is going to happen? As you said, I mean, it's signed at this point. It seems to me those late rounds, especially I should say like 7, 8, 9, 10. When it got later, Usyk started to figure something out. And usually in boxing, when you see a rematch, it's not the guy who had the advantage early the first time around. It's the guy who figured it out. It feels like Usyk just figured it out. I think he'd be a sizable favorite, man. I think he'd be like a minus 250.
Yeah, I agree with you. I was going to say even something heavier because I could picture Fury coming out of the gate as like something.
You can't make it too
like
one-sided though, because the public money will come in on Fury too heavy.
Like well, if
he comes in as a 4-1 dog or something, everybody, including me, will put my money on Tyson Fury.
But that's how I kind of see it, though. Like I feel like the odds would be like, how do we get action on this early? Like Fury starts as a pretty sizable underdog, then people will think like you and say, no, I have to throw something on Tyson Fury, and it'll balance out the odds a little bit more. So I think by fight night, yeah, it'd probably be Fury by like 2-1 by the end of it. But I think I could see the odds starting off pretty fat in Fury's direction.
Let's go from Tyson Fury to Mike Tyson, where he said earlier this week that Jake Paul couldn't even knock out a skinny guy like Nate Diaz. How's he going to knock out a heavyweight like me? You're going to fight me if I say I do think Jake Paul has the power to knock out Mike Tyson.
It's a great question because Mike Tyson, being one of the great personalities that he is, he made some great points. He goes, he didn't beat he didn't beat Tommy Fury. How is he supposed to beat me? He couldn't hurt him. He hurt little guys. Like, you know, a guy like Tyron Woodley is 5'8", you know, not like 170 pounds in his prime, 180-pound fighter who ballooned up to 190 for that fight. He makes some good points, and it's just, can we really see Jake Paul in a scenario where he can set Mike Tyson up to knock him out? I just think Tyson's kind of seen it all. He's been there. Jake could maybe still win a decision. I mean, they are short rounds. Maybe there could be fights where he looks a little bit more active, but I don't know. I think, and then mind you, also they're fighting in sparring gloves. They're fighting in 16-ounce gloves.
True.
So that also takes that element away. I don't know. I don't think Jake Paul can knock him out. And I say this as somebody who was worried for Tyson going into this fight. I didn't like the idea of Mike Tyson fighting, but he makes some pretty sound points.
What about the flip side of it? Like, Jake Paul's never been knocked out either. I assume that we think even at 7 years old, that Mike Tyson still has the punching power to put Jake Paul out.
Yeah, I don't. That's a hard one to answer.
You're so hesitant, dude. I'm sure this fight's ended in a knockout one way or the other.
I don't think so.
Really?
I think because it's 10 rounds, 2-minute rounds, and they're wearing giant puffy gloves. So I think the commission is hopeful that nobody gets knocked out. I think if Jake Paul gets knocked out, Texas goes, whew, all right, cool. The young guy got hurt. If Mike Tyson ends up getting if Mike Tyson at his age ends up getting hurt, like, people are going to be furious that this fight was even sanctioned, which kind of makes me lead to believe, like, is that really going to happen here? Is this like, hey, everybody come into the circus tent, but it's not going to be that entertaining?
You might be right. Brendan Tobin, Sports Machine, Sean Levine, talking fighting on the BetQL Network.
Tapped Out with Brendan Tobin and Sean Levine on the BetQL Network.
Just a few guys. One of us has a pool in their backyard. One of us has a chicken coop in our backyard. And one of us doesn't have a backyard. That's me. I'm the Sports Machine, Sean Levine, Brendan Tobin, Jake Noecker. We are tapped out here on the BetQL Network. Final segment. Time to tap out here, boys. We'll get into all the news and notes of the week. Before that, though, we were talking about the main event coming up next week. Dustin Poirier, a huge underdog, versus Islam Makhachev, plus 450. I've seen in some books as much as a 5-1 underdog. BT, I know you're personal friends with his boxing coach, Dia Davis, and a big fan of Dustin Poirier. I assume you're like me, where at some point the odds are just too good, where you got to lay down a little bit of money on Dustin Poirier just to win this fight. Maybe you know how you think he's going to win the fight. I'm not sure about that one because he tried that guillotine so many times in the last fight, but he's such a good boxer. I don't know how he's going to win the fight, but I got to put a little bit of money on it.
Yeah, I already have. In fact, it was funny because we were talking about this last week, and the method odds that were floating out there were him like 6-1 to win by knockout. And then like when I fired up our app that's legal down here in Florida, it was plus 750 for him to win by knockout. I'm like, that's too good. I can't in good conscience let that go by.
Seriously?
So yeah. So I'm like, because yeah, like what if he's gonna win, we know how he's gonna win. He's probably not gonna win a decision. The odds for him winning by sub are plus 2,300. So that just tells you what everybody thinks about him winning by sub. Not very likely. But Dustin Poirier to win the fight, like, yeah, he absolutely will have some pockets in this fight where he could potentially finish it. And so, yeah, I'm throwing a little something on it because the odds are too good. He's too good. The odds are too good. I understand why he's not the favorite. I'm not even disagreeing that he should be the underdog. I agree that Islam should be the favorite.
Of course.
But it's too much of a gap between the talents of fighter. And so that's why I threw a little something on Dustin by knockout, because I do think at some point that'll be there for him, because I think Islam is going to try and show his striking a little bit in this fight. I think that, he is, we talk about this legacy thing, right? Him versus Khabib, who's who. And I think that he likes to show, hey, I'm not completely the same fighter as Khabib. I got different stuff in my bag. You got his own coaches talking up like, hey, he's a better boxer than Dustin Poirier. Okay, well, let's see if he's going to go out there and show it. He's just head kicked Alexander Volkanovski. I imagine his confidence has got to be sky high right now. And so I think he's going to try something, especially early. Now, the back side of this is if it doesn't work for Dustin, or if it is a little too dangerous, well, then Islam's got the trump card in his pocket, right? Like he's going to have, unless he's really, really hurt, he's going to have always the safety net of his grappling. But I just think Dustin's hands are quick enough and dangerous enough that you give him a window at that number, I'm willing to play it a little bit, and I already have been.
Good stuff. Last time we saw Dustin, he was in there with Benoit Saint Denis as I think it went off the plus 225 underdog. I actually thought that should have been more like a pick'em fight. We all won money on that. Dustin's kind of a hard guy to put odds on, especially when he's fighting a pound for pound number one, like an Islam. So like you said, no surprise that he's an underdog. Jake, when it comes to the method, is there any chance that Dustin goes for that guillotine again? Or, because 23-1 seems like a little bit too much to pay me, here's another way that it could end up Dustin by submission. Islam takes it to the ground, like I think he will at some point, and then they just scramble around and Dustin ends up on his back. 23-1 sounds pretty good, doesn't it?
I think someone wins by submission this fight. I'm not sure if it's going to be Dustin. I certainly lean that it's going to be Islam, but no, Dustin openly said he's going to be jumping the guillotine. And when you got someone that shoots as often as Islam does and somebody who pulls a guillotine as often as Poirier does, plus 2,300, why not? I mean, otherwise, Islam by submission, I see a lot of rinse and repeat with the Khabib fight. But no, I think someone's tapping out in this fight for sure.
BT rolling his eyes out there.
What are you rolling your eyes for?
Oh, I'm not rolling my eyes. I agree. I get, look, anything at plus 2,300, if you're not going to throw $5 on it, like for something he's openly admit he's going to do it, like why not? I think that's the whole fun of it with Dustin Poirier. Even if, like, you know what? Even if you did think he was going to win a decision, if you think he can go win 3 rounds, man, Dustin Poirier to win the majority of the rounds, 3 rounds, you think Dustin Poirier can't win at plus 1,400 right now? I mean, he's too, like, it's just one of these fights where, yes, you get why he's the underdog, but you've mentioned his resume, the guys that he's beaten. He's too good. This is an all-time fighter. It's too good to pass up me throwing something What if something goes wrong? What if Islam Makhachev gets hurt? And I'm going to be sitting here and being like, I didn't put 1,400 plus 1,400 for Dustin Poirier to win a fight.
And that's why I'm going to sprinkle all sorts of different money on Dustin. I like Dustin, and I don't necessarily plan on winning. I get it. He's an underdog. He probably won't win the fight. That's what the odds tell us. But he's such a live wire. And I've won so much money over the years on Poirier. And I can easily see this happening. That I'm going to take him, like Jake said, at 23-1. Sure, let me put $10 down to win 230 on sub. You're telling me I can get 8-1 on knockout? I'm trying to get that 230 number. Okay, I'll lay down what I put down, $30 for that one. You're going to give me 4 or 5-1 odds that he just wins the fight straight up. Sure, let me put down 50 on that. I mean, look, we're not even to $100 yet with a chance to win damn near 1,000 in a bunch of different ways. So I'm not saying, I'm just saying the odds are a little bit too one-sided. And I can't really imagine too many people, BT, that are that confident in Islam that they're willing to pay the number that he's at right now. I mean, if he goes off at this fight as a minus 650, are there really people that confident in Islam against Dustin Poirier? To me, that's crazy.
Yeah, it's peaking towards that. And so, like, if you are into Islam, buy sub, like Jake had mentioned, that's about plus 100 right now. 3-1 for him to win by KO, nearly 4-1 to win a decision. So it's not bad, but it's like, but you know, just taking him on the money line seems psychotic. I mean, I'm sure Drake will do it, and that'll be the ultimate. Like, let me tell you something right now, Drake, do us all a favor, dude. Please tell us whether or not you're going to throw a heavy bag on Islam Makhachev on that, because I will be so far in the opposite direction, because this dude loves betting just like $500,000 on the favorite. Like, let's do it.
He's not good, but maybe he does always bet the favorite. I haven't paid a whole lot of attention. It does feel like he loses more bets when it comes to UFC, at least, than otherwise. All right, guys, let's finish it off with some news and notes of the week in the world of fighting. Conor McGregor and Michael Chandler are going to have a bunch of press conferences. One of them will be held in Dublin coming up on June 3rd. I don't know if the back and forth between Chandler and McGregor at the pressers is going to be as good as it was for, let's say, him versus Nate Diaz 1 and 2. Those were classics. Even the first time around versus Dustin Poirier. I am curious, though, because Chandler has a pretty sharp tongue himself, BT, and he's willing to go back and forth. What does Conor have left in the tank when it comes to the trash talk? Everybody's curious to see what kind of a fighter he looks like. But the last time out, I mean, against Poirier, weak going into it. Remember when he was Joe Lee's wife? That was corny. And then afterwards, your wife sent me DMs. Like, I know it's kind of weird to say, but I'm kind of curious what Conor's got left behind the microphone.
I don't know. I was watching this thing that he did this week. It was like some kind of, I don't know what stream he was doing, but he was hosing down everybody, man. He was giving it to Usman.
Old school
He
Conor.
was giving it to, yeah, he was just like, Usman, bum, Taporia, bleep him too. Volkanovski, I'd kick his head into the bleachers. I was like, everybody's, so people are like, oh, is the old Conor back? I don't know. I am genuinely excited because like that doesn't age. I feel like that, you know, that if he has the animosity there, and I feel like he has a lot of it built up. I think that that's going to be entertaining. I think Michael Chandler's a good dance partner for that.
Remember when he told Nate that he makes balloon animals with his left hand and gang signs with his right? I mean, what a classic line. Like, dang, he had that one ready. Or the first time around, when he told Dustin Poirier that he was going to bounce his head off the canvas like a basketball, and he did the first time around. Or when he had a couple of pretty good classic one-liners in the press conference for Eddie Alvarez and for Chad Mendez. How about when he got called out by Jeremy Stevens? Everybody remembers that classic one-liner. Like,
Of course,
I'm
who to
curious
believe
to
is that
see
guy?
if Conor, he's still got that sharp tongue. Can't wait for the fight also. All right. We've talked a lot about Poirier, Jake. Any chance if he wins that fight, he retires right afterwards?
I mean, that's kind of what he said is a possibility. He put it on the table this week that he said this might be the last fight. But I have a feeling if he loses, he will retire. If he wins, I feel like Dustin Poirier is going to want to defend that belt. I mean, that's just kind of his personality.
Also, the UFC hates when guys finally get their belt and then retire. I mean, remember how mad Dana was with GSP for a while, then eventually GSP came back and then he did it again. Although for Dustin, been fighting so long, BT, your guy to get the belt, if he gets it at his belt at this point in his career, maybe he does just walk off into the sunset. And he's the anti-Tony Ferguson and Cowboy Cerrone where we remember him at his best. That'd be awesome.
He really likes fighting. I think it's
I know.
The one thing with the thing with Dustin, I think that he is as honest as it comes to, he's like the football player that's like, I don't know if I want to do this. And then when training camp is over, but I love Sundays. I think that he's going to probably think about that, and that'll be a legitimate talk. And then I think what's going to end up happening, if he wins, they're going to offer him something that's a monstrosity that he cannot turn down, and then he'll come back. If he loses, sure, it's obviously a possibility, especially if something really bad happens and he suffers a bad knockout. But he's too good right now. Like, when I want to see guys retire is when they are in the Tony position of losing 9 fights in a row. Dustin, if he loses, it's usually losing to the champion or a former champion. So he's too good. I think if he wants to keep going a couple more years, he definitely could if he wanted to. But I think if he wins, there's no way it's his last fight. I don't think he wins and walks away with a belt. I think that they'll offer him something too sweet to walk away from.
I'm wondering, and we'll get this answer on the next show next Saturday, who you've got in mind for Dustin, because we talked about Conor McGregor's potential matchups in his next fight, and I said the biggest one could be Nate, and you talked about Islam. We talked about Sean O'Malley. We talked about Max for the BMF belt. I don't think Dustin is that guy that's going to get another chance against McGregor, so I am curious who you think is on the horizon if Dustin is the champion. Thanks to our producer, Jake. Thanks to Erich Richter from the New York Post. For my co-host, Brendan Tobin, I'm just a sports machine, Sean Levine. Have a good Saturday night, everybody. Appreciate you checking us out right here on the BetQL Network.